I'm JJ Stankevitz. Welcome into another episode of Instant Reaction presented by Sony here on the Colts Audio Network and on the Colts YouTube page. I'm joined every week by Colts Ring of Honor wide receiver Bill Brooks to break down the Colts' latest game. Bill, the Colts lose on Sunday Night Football 21-13 to the Minnesota Vikings at US Bank Stadium. Plenty to get into with this game. I think, Bill, we're going to start on offense. And the overarching takeaway from this game was, and this is something Jonathan Taylor made mention of in the locker room in Minnesota. He's like, we got to sustain drives. We have to find ways to sustain drives. And the Colts did not possess the ball in the red zone in this game. Their three longest drives in terms of plays and time of possession all did not end with points. It ended with an interception, a turnover on downs, and a missed field goal. So, as a general takeaway from this game, Bill, I think the offense never was quite able to get in a rhythm. And when they did get in a rhythm, there were self-inflicted mistakes. There were, one play that kind of torpedoed everything and kept the Colts from scoring a touchdown on offense in this game.
Yeah, when you have an offense that can't get in rhythm and they are moving the ball at times, but then all of a sudden, they get the ball and they three and out, or they sustain a drive and then they make a mistake during that drive, it's very hard to gain momentum. And when the Colts were 27% on third down, you're not sustaining drives, it makes it very difficult to win football games. It makes it very difficult to go out and play efficiently and help your defense as well as far as getting time of possession. And of course, the Colts today lose the time of possession battle with the Vikings. I should say last night, I'm sorry, with the Vikings. And when you don't possess the ball as much, don't give yourself enough opportunities to make those big plays or be consistent enough to go down and score. And then when you don't even get in the red zone, it makes it very difficult to score. And then, as you mentioned, those self-inflicted wounds does not help you at all. So the offense has to find something to try to get in rhythm so they can sustain these drives as well as put some points on the board at the end of these drives.
Yeah, sometimes time of possession and red zone stats are not always like indicative of an offensive performance. Like if you're hitting 30-yard plays, 40-yard plays, you're getting a 50-yard touchdown. Well, it doesn't matter too much if you possess the ball for a minute on that possession and you didn't get in the red zone. The problem today, Bill, is the Colts' longest play was 22 yards. There was the completion to Kylan Granson on that first drive, and then there was that incredible A.D. Mitchell toe tap. Both of those went for 22 yards. But beyond that, the Colts did not have another play over 20 yards in this game. So that, I think, is where you had the lack of explosiveness and you weren't efficient enough. And that leads to the kind of game the Colts had where they only managed 6 points on offense in this game.
Yeah, but I agree with you there, but you still want to possess the ball some more just to give your
Yeah.
defense a break down the road, because knowing that, hey, you have a team that is very explosive with Justin Jefferson, a team that had a decent running game and decent players on that side. So you want to try to possess the ball, and you are hoping to get that out of Joe Flacco as far as the consistency in the offense, to move the ball downfield, to make some completions, and hopefully not just eat up clock, but also score when you get down there and have an opportunity to possess the ball as long as you can as possible. But then also the availability to hit those explosive plays down the field. So I thought when they made a decision to go with Joe Flacco, that he gave them the best opportunity to do those things as far as have some consistent drives, but when needed to make the explosive plays also. But the Colts could not do that last night against the Minnesota Vikings.
All right, before we get into the nitty-gritty on offense of this game, a quick word from our friends at Sony. This NFL season, feel every play, every hit, every moment with the Sony 1000 XM5 noise-canceling headphones, the official headphones of the Indianapolis Colts. With premium noise cancellation, you're in the zone. No distractions, just pure football. Whether you're in your living room or on the go, you'll never miss a beat with Sony headphones. All right, Bill, the nitty-gritty of this, I think it starts with the Colts' first possession of this game, where it felt like they were rolling a bit. You get that 3rd and 1 completion to Kylan Granson where he goes up and he competes with Harrison Smith, a guy who's going to be a Hall of Famer someday, to come down with that 22-yard reception. Jonathan Taylor pops a 13-yard run right after that. You're right inside the Vikings 30, and you're thinking, okay, might go down, get some points here early and set a tone. And then, you talk about maybe the biggest just sort of self-inflicted mistake of this entire football game was Joe Flacco and Jonathan Taylor just kind of dropping a handoff. Jonathan Taylor, after the game, did not assign blame to anyone on it. He just said it's something we got to execute. But Bill, that play right there, where the Colts are rolling, you can make an early statement on Sunday Night Football and then to just give the ball away with Harrison Smith recovering that fumble. That to me felt like kind of an early gut punch to this offense and what they're trying to accomplish today.
Yeah, it was because they're rolling, they're moving the ball. You felt like they were trying to get into a rhythm, and when they were moving the ball, they had some successful plays in regards to both running and passing the ball. And then all of a sudden, you have that I don't know what you want to call it. Excuse me, mishandling of the handoff there, where Flacco put it into JT's body, and he just couldn't get control of the ball, and they fumbled it away. So those are kind of mistakes that you're trying to avoid, especially when you have those drives. And that's why having a drive and moving down the field is so difficult in the National Football League, because you have each play, you have 11 guys doing 11 different things. And if you have one guy make a mistake, that can hamper your drive moving the ball down the field. So it's important for everyone to be on the same page, everyone be attentive to their details on that assignment. So that hamstringed them right there from the beginning, where they had a turnover, and Minnesota got it and got the ball back.
And Minnesota did go down, and Sam Darnold was picked off in the end zone by Zaire Franklin on the ensuing possession. We'll get into the defense here a little bit later, but Bill, on that opening possession, kind of like I mentioned, Kylen Granson gets 22 yards. The Colts did not have a passing play longer than that in this game, and Jonathan Taylor, that 13-yard run, the Colts did not have a rushing play longer than that in this game. So Minnesota, they kind of were able to settle in a little bit on defense. But I thought the interesting thing with this game was that the Colts only had one three and out, I guess two three and outs when you count the one after the interception in the fourth quarter, after Nick Cross's interception. Two three and outs on 9 real possessions. You would kind of expect you would get more than 6 points on offense out of that. But again, you get some of these drives where you pop a first down and then you get behind the sticks and you can't overcome it. And Minnesota's able to get off the field on third down, or, you get into an advantageous situation and there's a penalty, or, something like that. It felt very start and stop in a way that wasn't like this wasn't a complete and utter disaster where the Colts just couldn't move the ball. They were able to move the ball. They just weren't able to do it with enough consistency to generate really much of anything on offense in this game.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about. When you don't have that consistency, you don't have a rhythm, you don't feel in sync with what's going on out there in the football field. It's like kind of a herky-jerky drive where you're going well, but then all of a sudden you get bogged down with something, or you make a mistake in regards to someone jumps off sides, or there's a drop pass, or there's a mishandling of handoff. There is something that always prevents you from continuing to drive and having a smooth drive. And that's very difficult to overcome. That's why you want to start off smoothly. You want to start off where you're going down the field and being efficient. And unfortunately, the Colts couldn't do that. They had some unfortunate errors to kind of bog them down a little bit as far as continuing to drive.
One thing to kind of touch on with the Colts offense is Michael Pittman Jr. now in consecutive weeks, he only has one reception. And, Shane Steichen was asked about it after the game, and he said, we got to find ways to get him involved early on. And that felt, maybe like if the Colts could have got him going in this game, that could have maybe opened some stuff up, but there just weren't opportunities there. The Colts weren't able to get that early in this game. And, I think Minnesota probably did a pretty good job taking away Josh Downs early. Downs still wound up with 6 catches for 60 yards. But, there seemed to be like a pretty clear plan by Brian Flores that Minnesota maybe didn't blitz as much as I almost expected, but they still did some weird stuff with their coverages. And again, Bill, I think they They worked to maybe take away Downs, maybe even Pittman, and then they also were able to take away Alec Pierce over the top, and that created some issues for this passing offense in this game.
Yeah, they did a good job. I thought the Vikings defense did a good job. Of course, they're going to play aggressive, and they're a fast defense getting to the ball. And they did some things to take away Pitt, and unfortunately, Pitt couldn't get going. And I'm sure the Colts are trying to get him involved and get him active in the game, knowing that when Pitt is involved, it helps the offense. And of course, with Josh Downs and Flacco having that rapport together, that you thought that maybe they can get something going themselves. Yes, he did get targeted quite a bit, and he did make some catches. So Josh Downs did do his job, but just it wasn't enough in this game for those guys to continue to move the ball down the field and be consistent. And like we talked about earlier, to get into a rhythm. And when you get into a rhythm, this thing seems like it's smoother. They're not thinking out there. Everything looks crisp, and they just couldn't get that in the game against the Vikings last night.
So a couple really big plays in the second half that kind of had an outsized impact on this game. I think, Bill, the first one is the interception that Flacco threw, where Byron Murphy Jr. is on Downs, and it looked like he was reading the outcut the whole time. If you even look at Downs, it looked like on film, Downs kind of tried to sell his route over the middle, and as soon as he even sold it over the middle, Murphy was kind of moving toward the sideline, and Flacco throws the ball. Murphy does a really good job kind of undercutting the route. Like, it's good coverage. And he
Mm-hmm.
picks that pass off. That was on a 3rd and 8 where the Colts were in a situation where they were close to field goal range, but you want to extend a drive and you want to kind of get back into the game at that point. Um, that was a really tough one to swallow in that situation. Ball's on the 35-yard line on 3rd and 8. Flacco gets picked off, and you don't get anything out of it. Again, Bill, another drive that ended where you were able to possess the ball and move the ball downfield. That the Colts gained 55 yards on that drive. That was their longest drive by yardage of this game, and then they were not able to come away with points on it.
Yeah, that was just, as you mentioned, that's pretty much indicative of the game, of how the Colts played from an offensive standpoint, as far as trying to move the ball down the field, and then, of course, not being able to sustain that drive, and then all of a sudden you have a turnover there, and that stalls your drive. The defense has to get back on the football field, and it just makes it very difficult. So give Minnesota credit, give their secondary credit, give their defense credit for what they did. They did some things that were a little different, but it was effective enough to slow down the Colts as far as going down the field and scoring points offensively.
Another sequence of plays that I thought was pretty tough was, so Flacco gets picked off. The next play, Nick Cross picks off Sam Darnold. And at this point in the game, it's early in the fourth quarter and Minnesota has a 14-7 lead. So you're thinking, okay, you get down in the end zone, you tie the game, you at least get some points, whether it's, on a field goal or whatever it might be. But you're really thinking, if you can turn that interception into a touchdown, that then becomes, okay, you maybe get some momentum back, put a little bit of pressure back on the Vikings in this game, but the Colts are only able to get 2 yards out of that set of downs that they got off the cross interception. They settle for a 42-yard field goal from Matt Gay. Another opportunity there, Bill, where Colts weren't able to get anything on the ground. Jonathan Taylor gained a yard. They threw a quick pass to Josh Downs and only gained a yard, and then they weren't able to convert on 3rd down. So another tough sequence there for the Colts offense in a situation that you would have loved to come away with some momentum changing points there, specifically with the touchdown.
Yeah, you only had 3 plays and 2 yards. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not good. Especially when you get a turnover, you want to capitalize on those turnovers. When Nick Cross makes that interception, you thought, okay, maybe this might be the thing that just jumpstarts this offense so they can go down and score a touchdown and change the complexion of the game. And unfortunately, they couldn't do it. As you mentioned, short pass to Josh Downs. Well, first a run by JT for a yard, then a short pass to Josh Downs for a yard, and then an incomplete pass to Pittman. And so, they try to get Pittman the ball, hopefully on that 3rd down to sustain a drive, but couldn't do it. It was 3rd and 8, and Minnesota stopped them and had to settle for a field goal, but it took away a little bit of that momentum from the Colts. But it would have been nice if they could have went down there and ended that drive with the touchdown.
Another spot in the fourth quarter, Bill, where the Colts defense gives some momentum to the offense. You got Kwity Paye sacking Sam Darnold, knocking Minnesota out of a shot at field goal range. They're up 14-10 at that point. Vikings punt it away. Colts take over at their own 21 and are able to move the ball a little bit here. You're getting first down. Jonathan Taylor picks up 7 on 3rd and 1. Then you get another opportunity where that drive started with a 15-yard pass to Pierce, and then you move the ball into Vikings territory. You get a 3rd and 2 on the Minnesota 40. Flacco throws incomplete for Michael Pittman Jr. Kind of a tough throw. Harrison Smith did a really nice job driving down on that pass and breaking it up on 3rd and 2. And then on 4th and 2, Bill, the Colts looked like they tried to run a bit of a rub route that the Vikings cover really well. Flacco tries to rip a throw into Ashton Dulin. Again, Harrison Smith is there. Stephon Gilmore helped break that pass up. Falls incomplete. Colts turn it over on downs from the Minnesota 40. And right there, you're thinking, okay, there are 5 minutes to go in the game. You pop a first down here, you go down, you score a touchdown, and all of a sudden you're leading. And the way your defense is playing, you feel pretty good about their shot at getting some pressure on Sam Darnold, forcing a mistake. Maybe he tries to force something through the air and you get a chance to pick it off again. But that right there took a lot of wind out of the Colts' sails. Again, Bill, where the defense gave him some momentum and the offense was not able to capitalize.
Yeah, you look at the end of that drive, I think, was 5:20 left after the fourth down play. But you figure if the Colts can get a first down, move down the field, and then eventually score a touchdown, you figure maybe 3 minutes left in the game, two and some change left in the game, and then it's up to the defense to stop them. And you feel pretty good that the defense was doing a decent job in the game in the second half. Not as much, but you hope that they got some momentum and could be able to stop the Vikings if they had converted that first down in regards to the Colts moving the ball down the field. So that was to me a sequence of plays on the third and fourth down, not being able to get those 2 yards that kind of changed the complexion of the game. And then Minnesota got the ball back, and then that was pretty much it. After that, they went down and drove down the field and scored a touchdown.
All told, in this game, Bill, just some final stats on offense. Jonathan Taylor carries 13 times for 48 yards. It's 3.7 yards per attempt. That was tied his season low in yardage at 48 yards. Joe Flacco goes 16-27 for 179 yards with an interception, a passer rating of 67.3. And just a game where, again, the Colts weren't able to really create a whole lot of momentum on offense, and they weren't able to sustain whatever they got, and that kind of shows up in these stats. One quick thing, though, that I just thought was interesting. I kind of went into this game thinking, okay, Minnesota's, they got this aggressive blitzing defense. I thought the Colts handled it pretty well. It was when Minnesota didn't send extra pressure, Bill, is where the Colts had their biggest issues. Joe Flacco against the blitz went 9-14 for 102 yards. He averaged 7.3 yards per attempt, and he was not sacked. But when Minnesota did not send a blitz, according to Pro Football Focus, he was 7-13 for 77 yards. That's 5.9 yards per attempt. He was sacked 3 times, threw a pick, and had a 39.6 passer rating on those plays. Just something interesting. I'm sure we'll dig into it more this week as the Colts move forward. Joe Flacco still remains the Colts starting quarterback. Shane Steichen told us after the game he did not consider putting Anthony Richardson into this game. So it's up to Steichen and Flacco and this whole offense to figure out some solutions with the Buffalo Bills coming to town next weekend.
Yeah, they have to figure out something, and it's going to be important for this offense to figure out something so they can move the ball down the field and as I said earlier, sustain some drives, but also have the opportunity to make some big plays, get some big plays over the top. If it's to Pierce or if it's to Pittman or even down, so whoever it may be, or Ashton Dulin, they have to figure out ways to get some big explosive plays. And then also more than that, to me, I think it's very important for them to get the running game going. They have to get JT going, have to be able to establish that run so you keep defenses honest where they have to play both the pass and the run. So they're going to have to figure out something to get this offense jump started so they can move the ball down the field and score some points to kind of put a gap between you and the opposing team. So it makes it difficult for them, make them one dimensional, so to speak, where they have to play catch up all the time. Then hopefully you can put some pressure on their quarterback and get after them and sack their quarterback. But that's going to be a tall task coming up this week against the Buffalo Bills, who are a pretty good football team.
All right, before we get into what happened with the Colts defense in this game, another word from our friends at Sony. Bill, I travel a lot during the season, and I couldn't live without these Sony 1000 XM5 noise canceling headphones. Whether I'm listening to music on the plane or trying to listen back to interviews I conduct in the post-game locker room, the premium noise cancellation these headphones provide me keeps me in the zone whether I'm relaxing or working. And when I'm at home, these are great for just hearing you, Bill, and keeping me locked into our podcast or for just hanging around the house. Take it from me, these are my favorite headphones I've ever owned. The Sony 1000 XM5 headphones are the official headphones of the Indianapolis Colts. All right, back here on Instant Reaction presented by Sony. I'm JJ Stankevitz with Bill Brooks. Bill, I thought the Colts defense in this game acquitted themselves pretty well. Like, Justin Jefferson's going to get his. Like, no matter what you do, he's going to get his yards. He came into this game averaging 97.7 yards per game in his career, which if that holds, it would be an NFL record. It went up in this game because he got 137 yards. But, to shut down Aaron Jones, who only had averaged 3 yards a carry on 21 attempts, Sam Darnold throws a couple picks. You get that incredible fumble by forced by Grover Stewart in the scoop and score, holding Minnesota to 21 points when you were on the field as much as you were, Bill. I just thought baseline was a good showing, and I thought this defense, coordinated by Gus Bradley, which I want to get into, acquitted itself pretty well in primetime on Sunday.
Yeah, they did a nice job. I mean, you look at the first half, they shut them out. I mean, the defense did a good job of shutting the Minnesota Vikings out where they didn't score any points. And, uh, you know, they did a nice job at first. And then also, as you mentioned, Justin Jefferson, he's an unbelievable athlete. He's an unbelievable wide receiver in the National Football League. And it's the reason why he's one of the best in the National Football League, because he can make those big plays and he can change the complexion of a game in a second. And as you said, for the most part, he's going to get his. You just try to prevent him from getting that 250-yard game and, 3 touchdowns or something like that. And I thought the Colts did, from a defensive standpoint as a whole, I thought in the first half they played well and they did a nice job of keeping Minnesota at bay. And then to me, I think that big interception in the end zone or at the goal line by Z was a big play, of course, to stop him from going down and score. And then Grove, I mean, what can I say about Grove? The play that Grove made was unbelievable. I mean, he just abused the center of the Vikings, and it was just unbelievable to see what he did out there in the football field.
I mean, all right, I was going to start the Zaire interception, but since you brought it up, like, goodness gracious, Grover Stewart. I mean, get to just two-hand shove Garrett Bradbury over like that. I mean, like that's like, like sometimes you'll see like those clips of like a fight going on outside of a bar, and it's kind of like two guys jawing at each other, and then one guy does like the two-hand shove, and if like that guy falls down, the whole crowd that's surrounded it's like, ooh, like, oh,
Yes.
that's over. You're not coming back from that. That's what Grover Stewart did to Garrett Bradbury there, just like knocking him down and then going after Darnold and getting the football out. Initially they threw a flag
Right.
because officials thought there was a face mask, but they ruled that any contact to the head was incidental. Any contact above the shoulders is incidental. So that ball's out. Kenny Moore II does a great job picking it up, scooping and scoring. That play right there, like what the Colts defense is getting out of Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner since Buck got back is like, okay, you're seeing it now. I was talking to Quiddy Pay after the game, and he was just like, those two guys are just they're the pillars of this defense. They make this thing go. And you're seeing it with what they're able to do against the run, but then like now the stuff they're getting against the pass because of Grover's power. Buckner's just like such a polished pass rusher, as we know. Those two guys back in the interior, it's not a coincidence that the Colts defense is starting to really play good football with those guys back in there together this year.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing a good job. You got those two guys in there, two pillars of that defensive line in the middle there, and they're just causing havoc for opposing offensive lines and of course quarterbacks. And just watching Grover, I mean, just the way he mishandled that guy. I shouldn't say mishandled, the way he handled that guy. It just seemed like it was abuse to that guy. I felt sorry for him because he just got pushed over and rolled back and on his backside there, and then Grover just continued to make a beeline to the quarterback and got to Darnold and made a nice play. And Darnold just could not hold on to the football. And, Kenny did a nice job of scooping and taking it into the house. But having Grove and Buck in there together, you can see how the defense has changed and what it looks like. It looks a little bit different, not just a little bit, it looks a lot different with
Hmm.
those two guys in there and just creating havoc. And not just that, but just on the run game as well. Those two guys in there being two guys that can hopefully stop the run and they can get better and improve on their run defense as, we go further into the season. So we'll see what happens moving forward, but give Grove and Buck and that defensive line some credit. I thought they did a nice job, especially in the first half against the Minnesota Vikings.
I left the stadium and I had this thought, Bill, thinking like it's such a shame that Buckner got hurt in week 2 because we never got to see this defensive line kind of grow early in the season. And they're doing it now. But the stuff that they're getting into, and I want to give defensive line coach Charlie Partridge some credit here. Obviously, Gus Bradley gets some credit here. The funky looks that they're starting to get into and learning, hey, what do these guys do well? How can we use them? Like that one, the sack that Kwity Paye had in the fourth quarter, where they've got Zaire Franklin three yards off the line of scrimmage, and then Laiatu Latu like overhit Zaire's right hip behind him to then press the center, loop around. He gets a free run at Darnold. Darnold has to step up right into the arms of Kwity Paye for a sack. Like this is as creative as I think like Gus Bradley gets kind of thrown into this bucket by folks who have seen his defenses, that it's going to be the same thing over and over again. It's going to be cover 3. Colts are running a lot of 2 high safeties right now, and they are doing some weird stuff with their defensive line, and it is working. And this is, I think you're starting to see this kind of evolution of this defense be really, really cool in what they're getting to. And it's creating really difficult communication things for opposing offensive lines that are leading to pressures, it's leading to sacks, it's leading to turnovers that I think like if you would see this earlier in the year, it could have maybe developed a little bit more in some of those games the Colts lost. But for the second half of this season, I'm legitimately excited to see what this defense can do. Okay, you got Josh Allen coming to town. How are you going to make things weird for him? You got Jared Goff coming to town in a couple of weeks. What are you going to do, for that matchup? My trust in Gus Bradley to play sound defense and then kind of throw some change-ups and knuckleballs at opposing offenses is pretty high right now. I really like what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, Gus is doing a nice job of changing some things up and getting away from certain tendencies that maybe he had earlier in the season and or even last season and what teams are kind of expecting from Gus Bradley. And that's a good thing because now it's keeping offenses off balance and not knowing exactly what they're doing, but also give the defensive line credit for working together in regards to some of those stunts up there and confusing the offensive line and being able to put some pressure on the quarterback. And, if it's not Kwity Paye or DeForest Buckner or Grove or Latu, someone's going to make a play, Dio or someone like that. So those guys are playing well together, and that's what you want to see from a defensive line standpoint. Those guys playing well together and working with one another very well, and hopefully executing the plays called and making some big plays, which will eventually help the linebackers, which will eventually help the secondary, and that's what you want. You want to work together, and those guys are doing a nice job. And as you stated earlier, it's kind of sad to see it now when Buck was
Mhm.
out for a few weeks and he wasn't in there. Maybe we would have seen this earlier, and then things could have been a little bit different for the Colts now and then going to the rest of the season, going through the rest of the
Yeah.
season.
Bill, the Colts sent 11 blitzes in this game. Minnesota on those plays averaged 2.5 yards per play. So that, those are working. And they're not just your sort of garden variety, draw them up in a blackboard blitzes. Again, these are disguised. You're getting sim pressure stuff. It's really cool to see this Colts defense be able to start playing like this. And I think a lot of it goes to you have a lot of veterans too, Bill, and you can have good communication. You can have sound play when there's a lot of trust between the guys who are dropping into coverage, the guys who are blitzing, knowing that, hey, everyone's going to be in the right spot on this play, and then we can go attack based on that.
Yeah, and you have confidence that those guys are going to do their job and do it well. And if when the secondary is counting on that defensive line to to get to the quarterback, to put some pressure on the quarterback where maybe the quarterback has to throw the ball early or make an errant throw. You're kind of counting on those guys. And then, of course, the defensive line is counting on that secondary to say, hey, just cover him long enough to give us enough time to get to the quarterback so we can put some pressure on him and affect the play, affect the pass, or whatever is going on from the offensive standpoint. And those guys are working together, and that's what you want to see. So give the defense credit, give Gus Bradley credit and that defensive staff credit for doing some things differently and kind of breaking a few tendencies from what they've done in the past.
One other area here where that communication really showed up was the interception that Franklin had. And I know, Bill, if you're watching it, you're like, well, Darnold just threw the ball right to Zaire. Like, what really went into that? But Z said after the game that he and Kenny had talked prior to Sunday night, saying, hey, if Darnold escapes the pocket, who like Kenny, you go after him and I'll stay back in coverage. So that's what happened. Darnold escapes pressure to his left. Kenny Moore and
Mm-hmm.
Zaire kind of dropped into the same general vicinity of the field, and Kenny just starts sprinting right at Darnold. Zaire drops into coverage. He kind of looks back for Hawkinson, who's coming across on an over route, and he drops into coverage. Kenny's pressure forces Darnold to kind of try to needle that ball in there, and he throws it right into the stomach of Zaire Franklin. So it wasn't just that you could be like, oh, what was Darnold doing there? But he got forced into that, and then Zaire picked it off because those two guys, Franklin and Moore, have played together quite a bit. They know each other's tendencies. They know how to work off of each other. And right there, that worked out with a really important interception early in this game.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we talk about communication. It might not be communication right there on the field. It might be something they talk about earlier in the week that they've seen that, you know what, if this happens, let's do this, or we can do this and stay within the confines of the defense and not go outside of the defensive scheme there. So that was good communication by Kenny and Zaire. And then, when the quarterback's rolling left and he's a right-handed quarterback, it is tough to make a throw, but, give Zaire a lot of credit for stepping in there, making the play, and Kenny doing his job as well. So big play to stop the Vikings from going down scoring on their first drive. So very, very big play for the Colts there to keep the Vikings off the scoreboard in that first quarter, and then also keep them off the scoreboard in the first half.
All right, well, that is going to do it for us here on this episode of Instant Reaction presented by Sony. For Bill Brooks, I'm JJ Stankevitz. We'll be back next weekend after the Colts face the Buffalo Bills. We'll have our usual Sunday night time slot. Our podcast will be out on the Colts Audio Network and on YouTube next Sunday night. For Bill Brooks, I'm JJ Stankevitz. Again, we'll talk to you next week after the Colts face the Buffalo Bills. So long.